Probably today is a good time to talk about Buddhism. Our focus on Tibetan Buddhism, but just give a kind of survey of Buddhism in general. Buddha evidently was born around 500 BC, which of course is the time of Plato in classical Greece. And there's probably a good chance that the people in Greece knew about people in India, because I think the Phoenicians were travelling through the Mediterranean to Britain and down the Red Sea into the Indian Ocean. And certainly in the time of Alexandria, which would be about the 4th century, 3rd century BC, under the rule of the Greek Alexander the Great, there were certainly Indians living in Alexandria. There's a famous book called The Physiologus. It's all about the unicorn and how the unicorn, one of the stories is that the unicorn was identified as the Buddha. So when Buddha was a forest hermit with the ascetics, he actually was referred to as the hermit unicorn. And certainly in one of the texts, it talks about the unicorn in relationship to what they call the aperture of Brahman or Brahma. So that when you're in meditation and you bring the energies from the root chakra through the 5 chakras to the throat chakra, and then you're going into the 6th chakra, the Ajna chakra, the third eye, it actually says that on an astral level the yogi develops a kind of horn, and that's actually likened to the horn of a unicorn. And of course in the Grail mythology it talks about the third eye being at the base of the unicorn's horn. So it's very interesting. It's like an identical system. So it shows you that the Grail legend and that idea of the Buddha as the unicorn coming from Alexandria, which of course is Egypt. And so I've shown that the unicorn is Set and the lion is Horus, the solar and lunar aspects of knowledge, good and evil. Anyway, there's no record of Buddha, evidently, and different schools of Buddhism, they have probably their own story. And the largest contingent of Buddhism are the Theravadins, and they are centered in Ceylon or Sri Lanka and Burma, that area, and they're called the lesser vehicle, the lesser teaching. And their idea is that the principle of meditation doesn't involve symbols or esoteric knowledge, what you might call the occult. And I think there's a different point of view within that school, that when you enter nirvana, then you negate self. And there are some that say you retain your individuality. So I guess the idea is that whoever enters nirvana is part of the one mind, is just part of the mind, and there's no specific body, there's no specific individuality. Of course, I don't agree with that, and I don't understand how that would work anyway. It's kind of like universal mind. When you come to Tibetan Buddhism, you're dealing with the figure of Padmasambhava, the lotus-born. He was an Indian living in the 8th century AD, and he's what you call a culture hero. So anybody that establishes something significant within culture can be called a culture hero. Like Moses came out of Egypt and established a religion. Akhenaten established a religion of his own making. So that would be a culture hero. And what he did was he brought Tantric yoga and Buddhism into Tibet. And that became known as, his school became known as the Red Caps. And it was a very esoteric, symbolic system. So quite the opposite to the Theravadins. So in Tibet you had the Mahayana, the greater vehicle, and it was definitely an esoteric teaching. And I've linked it to the Egyptian model, so I think it's derivative of the Egyptian model. And in Tibetan Buddhism you have the Trikaya, which are the three bodies. So in effect you could say Buddha, upon his enlightenment, had three bodies. And the Dharmakaya is when you enter nirvana, you put on the Dharmakaya, the body of wisdom, or the diamond body. So we're dealing with the idea of the crystal. That's referred to as the clear light of the one mind. So you could say when you're on the threshold of nirvana, which means the snuffing out of the candle flame, which is the end of ego, identity, consciousness as we know it, and you enter a transcendental wisdom, you go into another dimension, and in effect you're no longer a human being, you're no longer bound to the earth. You've transcended consciousness and culture, which constitutes the human being. If we look at the human being's evolution, as it were, or development, then we're talking about consciousness and knowledge and culture, where you transcend that. So in a sense you're liberated, your self is liberated, becomes individuated and indivisible. You're at one with yourself, and you're at one with the one. Then you have the Sambhogakaya, which is the body of perfect endowment. And this is probably the most complicated body, as it were, quite a complicated system. But it's based on the mandala. So if you imagine the body of a seer, a sage, or a yogi, or a guru, in the sense of transcending the body, not going into nirvana, but staying in a kind of, in the psyche, as it were, or an aspect, something like the psyche. Although it's spiritual, so you could say it is a spiritual dimension. You are a Buddha, but you have a relationship to the earth. You're in a sense, you're a teacher that emanates knowledge or wisdom to initiates on the earth via their psyche. So you can emanate messages into their dreams, or create synchronicities or visions, that kind of thing. So it's the realm of the bodhisattvas who have compassion for people on the earth. So again, you could say they emanate certain qualities and certain virtues and presences and essences from that realm. So you have the mandala with the four corners and the centre. So they refer to that as the 5 orders of dhyani. And the dhyani are the Buddhas of meditation. So it's a realm of pure meditation. If you go there, and you would go there because you're spiritually aware, you're enlightened in a sense. And you would go there, and in effect your life would be a life of meditation, and whatever you do there, part of what you do is remain conscious of people on the earth, as I say. So if you're on the earth and you're an initiate and you have a guru, then you have a one-to-one relationship. And if your guru died, the guru can still communicate to you. So I've had a number of dreams with Jung appearing in the dream, and he prophesied my life, he, in the sense of where I would live, what the environment would be like, certain buildings, certain places, and he actually revealed that to me in a dream. So I've always felt that Jung is behind what I'm doing. I don't have direct contact with him, but I feel that he is actually participating, because that's what that kind of person would do in the Tibetan model, and I think it's probably true. Jung said that when his wife died, she made an image of herself in her psyche and sent it to him. So he has this dream vision of an image of his wife dressed with a dress on. That was her favourite dress, and it reminded Jung of something they did together. And so in a sense, he sees that people that have died, they can actually project it back into your psyche. So it's not too impossible to think that there are spiritual gurus, spiritual teachers that do that. And in fact, Jung, in his Red Book of his visions, he says that he met his spiritual teacher in the form of Philemon. And Philemon was a kind of Gnostic, Egyptian Gnostic sage. And he used to communicate with Jung. Jung would have conversations with him. So again, if that happens to Jung, then I can imagine that Jung could do that to other people when he died. So you have the 5 orders of Dhyani Buddha, the Buddhas of meditation, and they're seated in the mandala form. This is all symbolic. We don't know what they do, but this is symbolic. And they're seated on various thrones. So you have a peacock throne, and you have an elephant throne, and then in the centre you have the lion throne. And we talked about Buddha being the unicorn, etc. And in the sense of Horus, he's the lion that defeats the unicorn or integrates the unicorn. He brings a balance between good and evil, and he becomes the solar lion king, seated on the golden cubic throne. So it's the same system. The root guru is seated on the golden throne, and when Buddha was born, he was born to someone called Maya, and his mother Maya had a vision dream where a white elephant descended from the celestial realms and entered her womb at the time of Buddha's birth. So again, you could identify Buddha's characteristic as one of the Dhyani Buddhas that incarnated in him. So that you could say, when he went around India teaching, he was really a root guru, or a guru of the visionary realm, or he was one of the Dhyani Buddhas. And it's interesting that when he was reborn as the Buddha, as it were, when he was taken out of his consciousness into nirvana, consciousness is referred to as Maya, the veil of illusion. So in effect, he was reborn from the celestial mother, Maya. So he had an earthly mother, Maya, and he had the celestial mother, Maya. These gurus, these spiritual gurus, they can emanate thought forms. They're in the visionary realm. And those thought forms are transmitted into the minds of people on the earth, initiates or people that are practicing self-knowledge. They call them grace waves. So they emanate grace waves, waves of grace, as it were. So you could say, in effect, that the numinous aspect of the divine presence, you could say, is a form of grace. So if you're listening to music and you're transported, as it were, you're uplifted, that numinous quality could be seen as grace. So anything, you could say, which has a spiritual presence is a form of grace, is a beneficent influence. It's not a matter of being sad or happy, it's simply that it's an ineffable elevation of your spiritual awareness. It's not the same as consciousness. It's not about affecting consciousness in the field of knowledge, but actually awakening a spiritual awareness. So listening to music, looking at nature, reading a book, talking to somebody, there can be that ineffable sense of grace. And then we come down to the third body, the Nirmanakaya, which is the incarnate body. So as I say, the Buddha would incarnate one of the Buddhas in sense of, you might say, a certain faculty or a certain ability. So they're really attributes of the Godhead. So you could say, when Buddha is in nirvana, he's God, he's the one. And the visionary realm, they're kind of attributes of the Godhead. So in the Gnostic system, you have the unknown Father, and then you have the Pleroma, which again are the attributes, like insight, Logos, Eros, Sophia, wisdom, all the spiritual abilities. So we can look at the nirvana as the sun, in essence. So you have the golden haloed Buddha, so he's got the golden halo, and then he's got the third eye, which is the visionary eye. The third eye of the Kundalini is the visionary eye. And that is referred to, that realm, the intermediate body is referred to as the cloud and the rainbow. So you have the sun from nirvana creating the rainbow through the clouds, and the rain that falls is really symbolic of the incarnate body. So you've got a kind of illumination, transformation, and redemption. So the rain redeems you. You know, it's like when the rain comes, it in a sense, it enhances the fertility of the earth. It helps things to germinate. And so you could say the seed in the dead ground starts to germinate. So in a sense you could say the sacrifice of the seed put in the ground, then it starts to redeem itself by growing, and then the corn grows up and becomes golden sheaths of corn, and that's illumination. And I've mentioned that about Osiris, exactly that process in the life of Osiris, the corn god. And of course, when you come to Tantric yoga, and the 7 chakras of the Kundalini, referred to as the serpent power. And I think that my own awakening at the age of 23, a kind of dark night of the soul, and a shift in consciousness, a shift in reality, literally. So the world actually became a kind of twilight zone, a kind of gothic hinterland, a very shadowy place where what they call the mysterium tremendum, which is the numinous quality of the spiritual presence, which fills you with fascination, awe, and terror. So you could say when your consciousness goes down through the body, as it were, or I would say the astral body within the body. The astral body is the visionary body. So the visionary body is the astral body within the physical body, and then you have the spiritual body that is not literally the same as the physical body and the astral body, but is, because it's emptiness, it's not limited to any form of knowable body. So the body of wisdom, the diamond body, the crystal, the pure white crystal, or the crystal of light itself, or life itself, you can't really specify that. It's non-specific, so it's not really identifiable. It enfolds the astral and the physical. The physical represents duality, the astral represents unity, and the spiritual body represents holism. So your consciousness, in a sense, your ordinary consciousness is eclipsed, and you in a sense, you descend down to the root chakra, in the Muladhara, in the base of the spine, very deep. And they say it's near the anus. So it's related to the scarab, to excrement and dung, as it were, the black sun. That's really what it's about. So you could say the illuminated consciousness, that is the illumination of the Buddha, has its polarity, as above so below, in the black sun. So you might say you're in the dark. Something's happened to you, you don't know what it is. If you're not living in India, then you wouldn't have the education, spiritual education, to know what it is. And even if you're brought up as a Christian in the West, I mean, the esoteric knowledge of talking about dark night of the soul is not typical. I mean, it's not something you'll hear in church. I mean, you know, in church you don't actually talk about the process of initiation, for example. How Jesus talked to his disciples, he said that he speaks in a secret language to them. Be ye wise as serpents, which is again the allusion to the serpent and the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, self-knowledge that will make you wise, and then you can eat of the tree of life. So you're the seed, you know, in a sense, the seed of yourself is being sown in the dark soil, the black sun, the ash of the black sun. As I say, the mummy chamber, and the sun sets, and you go into the field of black magic. You go under the moon deities Thoth and Isis, and Set and Nephis. They're all to do with magic in the black sense, because you're dealing with the black art or the black hermetic art. And in alchemy, that's referred to as the prima materia. So you could say the universe, in terms of dark matter and dark energy, which we don't know really what it is, you could say that is the prima materia, which is also the watery abyss. And that watery abyss is called the creatrix. It's the creative energy of the mother. It's the creative energy of the mother. And of course we're dealing with Maya. We're dealing with the mother Maya, the source of all things, the source of creation. So in a sense, creation comes out of this prima materia. And that's referred to in alchemy as, in a sense, of the awakening of your visionary awareness. Your visionary awareness is what comes out of that. And of course that's actually awakened when you rise up the royal road, as it were, the central column, the spinal column, to the third eye. So we're in this kind of excrement, this dead material, the decay of nature, the decay, and of course that's very fertile. So we talk about the black silt of the Nile being very fertile, and the name of Egypt being Kem, black lands. And then you have the sexual energy. The second chakra is when you get the fire, the germination, the fire of the seed, the germination. And that's the ember, the fiery ember within the black ash. And that's the phoenix who's going to rise out of the ash. And that's the germ of the scarab beetle within the ball of dung, the black sun. So the ember of the sun is the star seed, because the sun's a star, and that's the symbol of the underworld, a circle with a star inside, and that's Horus. The underworld really is synonymous with Osiris, so Osiris's seed as the black sun is Horus. And in Gnosticism, they talk about the descent from the Godhead as the descent of the Logos. And the Logos, the word, is actually Christ, the symbol of Christ. So in a sense, the seed of the Christ consciousness or the Buddha consciousness is actually sown in the black soil. And then in a sense, sexually it begins to germinate, so it begins to germinate, and then you come to, and that's the red, so you have the black red, and then that comes to the navel, the navel you can think of in terms of the Delphic oracle. That's probably the best idea. And there's a stone at a round stone that they often say is an egg. So it could be the egg of the phoenix. And Horus is the sun seed within the golden egg of the phoenix. So we're getting the gold, the black, the red and the gold, the sun seed. And it's also the omphalos, which is the centre of the world, the centre of the earth. So we're talking about the centre of the mandala and the solar lion throne, which is the source of the sun. So you could say the son of nirvana, the golden haloed Buddha, is in a sense emanating its energy into the visionary realm, and that becomes the golden throne of the solar lion king, or the root guru. In the Delphic oracle you have the stone, and that's referred to as the serpent stone, Python. Python is the spirit of the place. Python is the son of Gaia. And I've also talked about Typhon living in the volcano, or the pyramid as it were, and he's the assistant of the god of fire, Hephaestus, and Typhon is also the son of Gaia, and that's Set, and Set is the brother of Isis, and Isis is the red serpent, Osiris is the dragon of Draco, etc. And at the Delphic oracle you have the round stone, and the Delphic oracle was founded by Gaia, and it was passed down to Zeus. So Gaia and Uranus give birth to the Titans Saturn and Rhea, and Saturn gives birth to Zeus, and Zeus gives birth to Apollo and Artemis and Hermes. The Delphic oracle was handed from Gaia to Zeus. Now Zeus, his symbol is the eagle. He's a sky god, so his symbol is the eagle. Now the eagle is often associated with the North Star, Pole Star in Draco, and the eagle then becomes the eagle dragon that's a kind of admixture within the phoenix. So the phoenix is a kind of eagle dragon from the North Star, and carries the sun seed of Horus from the Isle of Fire in Draco, and as I say, more or less plants it in the black sun, as it were, or in the underworld, which is a circle with a star in the centre. So anyway, the stone egg, as it were, of the serpent, the stone egg of the serpent, which could be again the golden egg of the phoenix, is flanked on east and west. So each side of the stone are two eagles, and those eagles, as I say, represent east and west. So again you have the idea of the eagle and the serpent, which is the phoenix. Now it's interesting that the Greeks actually refer to that stone as the stone of Harpocrates, and Harpocrates is a form of Horus. So even in the Greek period of Egyptian rule, the Ptolemaic kings, they referred to the Delphic oracle, the stone, the navel of the world, as Harpocrates. So again we have absolutely an identical system of the golden egg of the phoenix containing the sun seed of Horus. And then we come to the fourth chakra, the heart, which is in the center of the body, as it were. So it's kind of the center, of the 7 chakras, as above, so below. So you're going from the more animal nature to the more human nature, because in Egypt, the seat of consciousness and knowledge and thought is the heart. And of course, the heart, you could say, it represents blood, represents fire, and transformation, transmutation of the elements. And in alchemy, they talk about the king stepping out of the fire, wearing the diadem of the heart. So the crown, the diadem, the crown contains the heart stone, the bloodstone, which is the carbuncle, which is found in the base of the horn of the unicorn, in the Buddha legend and in the Grail legend, and really in the Egyptian legend. So really, you could say the heart chakra is a matter of balance. As I say, it's midway between above and below. And in the Egyptian model, it is actually the weighing of the heart, which is the center of the Book of the Dead. And of course, the Tibetan Book of the Dead deals with the 3 bodies, and the middle body is the visionary body. So we're dealing with vision, consciousness, vision, which becomes a third eye. So we're talking about intuition. We're talking about the beginnings of the divine spiritual awakening in terms of consciousness. So you could say that when you become sensitive to the divining aspect of consciousness, when you're reading between the lines, when you're delving into the meaning of your life, when you're making connections to the occult, to the esoteric, to the magical, then in a sense you're using your heart. And that's on a very unconscious, subconscious level. It's not about intellect, it's not about the upper part of the brain, the upper cortex. It's not about intellectual intelligence, it's about emotional intelligence. So really that's what we're talking about. And then of course you come to the throat chakra, which is oracular. And of course the phoenix is the oracular bird. And it says that she's sitting on a pole above the Isle of Fire, which could be, as I say, the Isle of Fire, or the volcanic island, or the pyramid. The Isle of Fire is in Draco, but it could apply to any of the island constellations, which is symbolic of Atlantis, which emerges and submerges in the watery abyss. So when the star comes out of the watery abyss, as it were, in the act of creation, then it becomes an Isle of Fire. And you have the star system, the solar system, etc. So you could say the planets encircle the sun, just like the islands encircled the central island of Atlantis with the mountain, or the pyramid, or the primeval mound, different ways of looking at it. But in the Egyptian model, the weighing of the heart, you're bringing into balance good and evil. So it's about the knowledge in the heart, the consciousness, and you're finding a balance, which is coming into line with Mart, which is world order. So on the horizontal level in your life, you're creating world order through self-knowledge. As you integrate the various revelations and symbols that come into your life, for instance, a scarab. So if you have a scarab, or you have something in your vision or dreams that means something to you, whatever the symbol is, it could be Isis herself, it could be a pyramid, it could be a flower, it could be a tree, it could be any of the amulets of the gods or anything like that. And once you see your identity and you feel very close to things, just like when you're growing up, you like certain colours, you like certain music, you like certain perfumes or whatever it is. It doesn't matter what it is. In the microcosm, it can be anything. And you're attuning to the inner essence of something, the soul essence. That's the most important thing. So inside you, you have this private sense of yourself that nobody else knows about. And you cultivate it, like in your secret garden, you cultivate that. And in Tibetan Buddhism, they call that the secret doctrine. That's actually the secret doctrine. It's a secret occult knowledge that is part of your ancestral legacy, because nothing you do is in isolation. You're part of a family tree. Psychically and spiritually, you're part of a family tree. Like Parsifal is related to the Fisher King. So you have to deal with Set. Horus has to deal with Set. Set poisons Horus. Horus has to discipline Set. Because they're all part of the Ennead. It's only an occult ritual. All the gods in the Ennead, I mean, they're all playing their part. So in your psyche, the entities of Osiris, in your visions and everything, I mean, they're only playing their part. It's only a meta program. It's only, whatever. Like Jung in his Red Book, he met all these entities, and Philemon, the Gnostic spiritual teacher he had from Egypt, and you learn. I mean, they're teaching you an occult law, as it were, the secret doctrine, and so once you establish a kind of integration of the meaning of your life, which is your soul essence, which is made up of, you might say, the alchemical ingredients of those things that matter to you. Your private world, in a way, it's your private world that only you know, only you have access to it. And that's creating world order. So your consciousness is, in the soul essence, is, you might say, extracted from the microcosm around you. So you could be in a city somewhere and something's revealed to you. You could go to another country, you could meet a person, read a book. And different things on your travels mean something to you, and you collect them together. And so, in a sense, they're derived from the microcosm, the kind of secret garden of the earth. And there you gather them, just like you gather seeds, you gather them together, and that's called integration, which leads to individuation, which is a higher level. So you're creating a world order because your consciousness is attuning to the world around you on a very deep level. So in effect, you could say, to a certain degree, you're sharing your consciousness with the world in terms of the collective unconscious. And as we say, the fifth chakra, the throat chakra, is the oracular chakra, and to do with prophecy, and of course that's related to intuition and everything. So you could say that as you intuit the inner meaning and essence of the microcosm, which is your own soul essence, then you might become oracular. So you might become prophetic about the future. So you start to read your future. Now, as you go from the fifth to the sixth, then we're talking about the opening of the third eye, which gives you access to, you might say, the inner teaching, the real inner teaching, So all that you've gathered, all the secret doctrine, now you can read the secret doctrine. Now you can look at the Book of the Dead, you can look at the Bible, you can look at any sacred text and see yourself in those texts. So when I read the Egyptian Book of the Dead, I found the scarab, because I had these synchronicities with the scarab in Oxford. I didn't know much about it, but when I got down to my life review, studying my life review many years later, then I realised how important the scarab was. So when I read the Book of the Dead and the scarab, I mean, that belonged to me, that was part of my soul essence, that was like my secret doctrine. So we talk about the diadem of the heart, and you could say the jewel of the crown. And in ancient Egypt you have a golden serpent called the Uraeus, and it's around the head of the king, and the head of the Uraeus cobra, because cobra in the Egyptian hieroglyphs means eternal, so it's the eternal. It's the golden ring, as we say, of the golden chain of the Hermetic order. So it's the lineage of initiates, like Buddha would be in the line of Buddhas. And upon his final initiation before his enlightenment, the night before his enlightenment, the Naga serpent appears. And when the Naga serpent appears, that's the initiate of wisdom. It's the same as the golden halo and the third eye, exactly the same. The third eye is the Uraeus cobra, and the golden halo is the golden headdress, as it were, or the golden crown. And that's the bloodstone, the red stone of the heart, the intuitive aspect, raised to a higher level, prophetic level, and that's called Bodic insight, Bodic insight, enlightened insight, or intuitive wisdom. So you're going beyond knowledge into the field of wisdom. So you're really, in a sense, what you're going to do is open the secret doctrine, the book of your life, and then close it. So in a sense, you're going to finish with consciousness, you're going to finish with the planet Earth, you're going to transcend your body, you're going to transcend your memory as you know it. And Kundalini, at that stage, is known as the flame of wisdom. And Isis is actually known as the Lady of the Flame. So they're identical. They're both red serpents. They're identical. It's interesting also that the horn of the unicorn is said to be partly red, and it's a spiral, so a spiral horn. We talked about the aperture of Brahman, which comes out of the head of the yogi on his astral body. So he has this horn-like protuberance. And I liken the horn, the spiral horn, so if you take the phallus of Shiva at the crown of the head, so the god Shiva is at the crown of the head, and that he represents the male phallus. And in the third eye is the Kundalini, and she's the cobra serpent. And when they embrace as the father-mother dyad, then in a sense the Kundalini wraps herself around the phallus. And that's what my interpretation of the spiral horn of the unicorn. And in that union, the you could say your own consciousness gives birth to yourself. As Maya, who's a form of Kundalini, Maya gives birth to Buddha. So you give birth to yourself, because the whole process is self-knowledge and self-realization. So in effect, you give birth to yourself. I mean, the yogi in meditation does give birth to one's true self. Because really, the whole symbolic occult process is taking place in your consciousness. And with the third eye, if you imagine the third eye as being able to see through the veil of Maya, to read the text, the secret doctrine, then you look at your brain, all the chambers of your brain, as a labyrinth. So your brain, memory, consciousness, because your memory is spread all over your brain. So you could say thought, memory, knowledge, consciousness is spread all over your brain. And that's like a veil of illusion, because that's where all the self-deception, because consciousness in the end is self-deception. It's a meta-program and it's conditioned. It's a place of the multiple eyes, the multiple identities, and the ego is, as I say, the form of the dominant identity that you use at any time. So when you're a yogi, that's your dominant identity. And when you go in, when you find your true self, you let go of that dominant ego, which is yogi, the yogi. So in Zen Buddhism, they say, at the end of the day, in the final analysis, there is no Zen, there is no Buddha, there is no meditation, there is no posture. So in a sense, there is no identity anymore. You're no longer even a spiritual person, because you've gone beyond the labelling. So if you think of the brain as a labyrinth, then you have to find your way through the labyrinth, the veil of illusion, which is really the underworld, because below the step pyramid, there are hundreds of chambers, and they don't actually know what they mean. But if you look at it as a labyrinth, then it seems that it probably is representative of the labyrinth of consciousness, because that's where the Book of the Dead takes place. So there are over 100 chapters or spells of the Book of the Dead, and you enter the Book of the Dead during the dark night of the soul, and you go underneath the pyramid in the black cube, and you have to find your way from the west to the east. And you have to go through the 12 hours of the night, which could symbolize the zodiac or the gods. So each door has a sigil, a magical formulae, and you have to crack the code, you have to crack the symbolic code, which means you have to interpret the symbols revealed to you by Thoth in terms of the hieroglyphic language, and you have to take them to heart and then intuit the meaning of your own secret doctrine or the things in your secret garden, however you want to look at it. So you're coming out of the labyrinth, you're coming into the east where the sun rises, and in the Egyptian model, the sun hero Horus enters the tail of the snake in the west, goes through the body and comes out of the head. The open mouth of the serpent in the east is where the sun hero comes out, where the sun rises. So really you've had to go right through the serpent, which is the same as saying you've got to go through the 7 chakras, or you've got to ascend the 7 steps of the step pyramid in order to be illuminated. and the step pyramid is the body of Osiris. So in order to become an Osiris, because Horus is the son of Osiris, and he becomes the dragon king or the solar lion king. And of course the dragon and the serpent is the phoenix, and the lion is the sun. And you've got the sun seed. At the end of when you're approaching the head of the serpent in the east, you're really, you know, in one of the texts of the Egyptian magic, it shows Ra in his sunboat. So Ra is really synonymous with Horus, and Ra's in his sunboat or starship, and he's going through the underworld. And when you're approaching the east, you see the light at the end of the tunnel, as I say, like in the near-death experience. So you go out of your body. In the visionary realm, you have a tunnel. You go through the tunnel, and the light that you see at the end of the tunnel is actually Venus, the morning star. Because the morning star, you see the morning star, and then you see the sun comes up. And it said when Buddha approached the dawn, he sees the morning star. That's how they describe it. He sees the morning star, and then he's enlightened. Jesus says in Revelation 2, if you overcome Satan, which is the serpent, you go through the serpent, you overcome the beast 666, the scarlet dragon, I'll give you the morning star. So even Jesus says that, I'll give you the morning star. And it says later in Revelations that the dogs, the whoremongers, the liars and the sorcerers are not allowed into the kingdom of heaven. So you've got to overcome occultism. Just as I say that you have to overcome the black art of Aleister Crowley in order to enter the age of Horus, because he saw his connection to this angelic presence as was, and that in a sense Aleister Crowley, I think he was saying, was bringing in the age of Horus, which would be the New Age or the age of Aquarius. So I see that symbolically, that he is the B666 and he represents occultism, and you have to overcome him. It's very interesting. So we come to the 7th chakra, the 1,000-petaled lotus, at the crown of the head. And in the Egyptian model, that's where the phoenix comes out of the blue lotus. Just as this, and the phoenix is the creator god and represents the self, your true self. So the yogi's soul and spirit is identified with Buddha. So you become a Buddha, just like you become identified with Thoth, the master. And Thoth is the one, and Buddha is in the one mind. And the dragon path leads to the Tao. The Tao is the dragon path that leads to itself. And of course we've mentioned the ley lines of the dragon paths as well. They lead from temple to temple, or from sacred site to sacred site, which again you could say is going from chakra to chakra, or the points of the mandala, or you travel the lines of song in Aboriginal dream time. So in the visionary dream time, the very early ancestors, what they say is the Al-Karinga, the golden age of the mythical beings. So they saw their ancestors on earth as incarnating the gods. So they're saying that their ancestors were the incarnation of the gods in dream time. So they were living in a kind of paradise, and their life, when they saw the microcosm, that was like a secret language. And then we seem to have lost that connection. But the shaman kept that connection to the ancestors. And of course, in Egypt, Osiris is lord of the ancestral spirit or souls, lord of the Kas. And the Ka actually means power, but it also means embrace. So when he embraces Horus, he transmits the spirit of Draco or the spirit of Orion. And it also means double. So that actually means, the Ka actually means your astral double. And it says when Horus becomes master, he can travel the heavens and the earth. And of course Buddha could leave his body at any time, come back into his body, and that kind of liberation, that freedom to be yourself in the one, means that you've got access to the whole of creation, you've got access to all of reality. So when they refer to nirvana, they actually say that it is reality. So as I say, the emptiness, the oneness has no limit. It's a circle, but it has no boundary. And you could say it enfolds reality. So in your astral double, no matter where you go, into a body or into a visionary realm or into another universe or another dimension, you're always one. You're always at one with yourself. So wherever you are, you're always at one with reality, which is cosmic order in the terms of Ma. So you establish world order on the horizontal level, on the vertical level, as above so below. The world order is in line with the cosmic order, and that's created by Thoth, the architect of the universe, who's lord of the law of Ma'at, and that's the Buddhist Dharma. And they talk about the eightfold path, which is the path of righteousness, right speech, right action, right meditation. So you have to follow the eightfold path. And just quickly, I'll say that Tibetan Buddhism went into China and eventually into Japan, and it became Zen Buddhism. And it's still part of the Mahayana school, but the Zen Buddhists, they stripped away all of the symbols, they stripped away all of the occult. And so all they're interested in is meditating and entering nirvana, what they call satori, or illumination or enlightenment. And so what they do is, through the years, through their meditation, they hope to get a moment of satori, a moment of enlightenment, where they see through the veil of illusion and they see into the fourth dimension. You could say they see through the three-dimensional world into the fourth dimensional world, which is a kind of synchronicity. So synchronicity, when you see, say you dream of a bird and then the next day that bird appears in front of you, could be a kingfisher, then that's a moment of satori, that's a moment of enlightenment, because something's being revealed to you in the fabric of the three dimension that points beyond itself. So it's coming from a spiritual source, an archetypal source that's projected into your mind and into your body, or into the psyche and into the world. So that is a moment of Satori, in my estimation. So anyway, that kind of encapsulates Buddhism to some degree, and I think that's enough today.